Okay, moving right along to story number 2. That first story was kind of a downer. It got kind of depressing. So here's a little something to elevate the mood a little bit. Marvel Comics. They're inventing 2 new characters. They are creating a new team called the New Warriors. Now, I'm kind of strange here. I am not really a reader of comic books. Never have. I tried to read comic books. I bought comics in 2012, 2013, when Dynamite Comics were bringing back the old pulp heroes, the Shadow and the Spider. But they just got so weird, man. They got so weird. They were not the characters that I remembered growing up and listening to my uncles talk about them and listening to radio shows and things like that. So I stopped. Now, basically, I just collect, older comics, the things that aren't in circulation anymore. So I love collecting like old Doctor Strange comics, old Batman comics if I can. ROM is a big one that I love ROM. So don't really read comic books, but I love comic book characters. I love the mythology of characters like Batman and Superman and Iron Man and Captain America and Huntress and Wonder Woman and Zatanna and just all of them. I think that they're absolutely fascinating. And for a guy, who was raised with Batman the animated series, it's not surprising that I like comic book characters even when I don't read comic books. Okay, and I like a lot of comic book movies. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, perfect. That's the gold standard. Will never be beat. A lot of the Marvel movies before Age of Ultron, I really, really like. Some of the older stuff too, like The Phantom and The Rocketeer and The Shadow. Batman Returns, that's a guilty pleasure. Love that movie. So yeah, don't really read comic books, but I love comic book characters. So Marvel Comics is creating 2 new characters. They made a big fanfare about this. They're going to be part of something called the New Warriors, because the New Warriors were a group that was created in the 90s, I believe, right? And because they are creating a new team that is going to be called the New Warriors, it is now the New Warriors. Okay, now, oh gosh. 2 members of this new team are twins. And their code names, right, their superhero names, are Snowflake and Safespace. I kid you not, gang. I could not make this up in a million years. I could not make this up. I would have had to have a lot to drink on St. Patrick's Day to even get close to the people who created this went, okay? But no, Safespace and Snowflake. Now, their names are supposed to be post-ironic, right? Because, Snowflake today, Snowflake and Safespace, they have very negative connotations. If you need a safe space, if you're a snowflake, then you're considered weak, right? That's what those names have been connotated with. Well, now because they're, superhero code names, now it is post-ironic, because now what was weak is now strong. Don't you get it? That's what the brilliant minds at Marvel are thinking about. And the big news of all of this, is that Snowflake is, wait for it, he's non-binary. To really do this justice, I'm going to have to do something that I don't know if we've ever done on the Rolling Stone before or not. We are actually going to have 2 videos with a clip. Okay? We had a clip in the last video, and now we're having a clip here. Okay? This is Marvel Comics trailer announcing, revealing these 2 new characters, Snowflake and Safespace. Here it is.
Snowflake and Safespace are the twins, and their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory, to take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safespace is kind of a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can only trigger them if he's protecting somebody else. Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them. Snowflake has the power to generate individual crystallized snowflake-shaped shurikens. The connotations of the word snowflake in our culture right now are something fragile. And this is a character who is turning it into something sharp. Snowflake is the person who has the more offensive power, and Safespace is the person who has the more defensive power. The idea was that they would mirror each other and complement each other.
Again, it's something that you just have to see and hear for yourself in order to even believe it, because otherwise, if I was just going off of my outline, if I was just talking to you, you probably would be thinking, What? No, that can't be happening. Not Marvel. Not Stan Lee's place. Not the same company that gave us Iron Man and the Hulk and Moon Knight and Hawkeye and Black Widow and Captain America and Ant-Man and the Wasp and Black Panther and Doctor Strange and just all of these characters that are now household names, part of our modern mythology. No way that Marvel has actually done this. They have. Unfortunately. Now, to kind of be serious here for just a second, these characters, let me just say, these characters were only created to be political. These characters were only created. That is the only reason why these characters exist, okay? You watched the clip, you saw what they looked like. You saw their costumes, okay? And because they are only political, they are simply political empty glasses into which a specific fad and political message can be poured into. That's why they look so lame. They weren't trying to create characters that are going to inspire people. They're not going to create characters that really are even meant to last very long, because all they are walking poster boards for a particular ideological message. That's why they look lame. That's why their powers are lame. Safespace, really, he can create force fields? Okay, well, Sue Storm of the Fantastic Four could already do that, and she was created in 1961. And plus, he can only create these force fields when he's protecting someone else. So if he's trying to protect himself, he doesn't have anyone there, he can't do it. Well, that makes him even more useless than a Blue Lantern, who, if I'm up to speed on Blue Lantern mythology, they really can't do anything cool with their rings unless they're right next to a Green Lantern. So I suddenly have a very funny image of this character, of Safespace, desperately running from some supervillain, and then deliberately getting close to Granny so he can raise up a force field so he doesn't get splattered waiting for some other character, to pull his bacon out of the fire. And then going on to Snowflake, his power, which is to make snowflake-shaped projectiles, okay? Which is, of course, where the post-irony comes from, because, snowflakes are seen as soft and weak, but he uses it and he makes something sharp. A projectile that's shaped like a snowflake. Wow. Big whoop. Wow. Using your totem, using your symbol as a projectile. That could be like Batman or Moon Knight or Green Arrow or anyone like that, right? No. Oh, and plus, it would be remiss. I'm laughing so much, I apologize, gang. I just find this so ridiculously funny. It doesn't even make sense, right? Because there are plenty of things in nature that are still fragile but sharp. A shard of glass, a splinter, a Scotch pine needle. Those aren't exactly very strong. You could snap them, you can grind them into powder or anything, but they're sharp as hell. Okay? Try taking the decorations off of a Scotch pine Christmas tree, right? A couple of weeks after Christmas. right? Get a splinter in your foot and be digging it out. You'll know what I mean, right? So these characters only exist to be political. And again, it all hinges on the non-binary aspect, of which they both are, because they make it very clear to say that Snowflake, well, he identifies as non-binary. In his twin, Safespace, he identifies as male, which means that it could all change. Next issue or something. I hope it doesn't last more than 10 issues. It doesn't deserve to last more than 10 issues. But there are, again, more serious implications of all this. In the first place, it defeats the entire point of entertainment. Okay? I'm not saying that entertainment has to be brainless cotton candy fuzz, right? I don't think that it should be. I think that entertainment should have some substance to it. It should leave you feeling full in some sense, okay? So I'm not saying that. But again, it leaves you feeling satisfied. Entertainment leaves you feeling satisfied when it speaks to your human nature. I'll bring up the example of Shakespeare again. Shakespeare is wildly entertaining, okay? Maybe not so much when you're just reading him off the page, but you go to a good Shakespeare production, by golly, I mean, it is just a blast. It is just so much fun to see good actors, right? To see really good actors doing these plays, speaking that immortal dialogue, and then again, okay, playing with these eternal themes of love, jealousy, ambition, self-doubt, vengeance, all of these things that Shakespeare incorporated into his plays. That's what makes it that's what makes it fulfilling, because these plays, there's something in there for everyone. I think somebody at one point said that there is something in a Shakespearean play for everyone. And there's something for you individually, no matter at what stage of life you're in, no matter kind of what has been happening to you, there is something in Shakespeare that you can relate to. Something that, hey, yeah, he's kind of going through the same thing that I am. Her situation is kind of sort of like the one I am. That's where the substance comes in, but it's wildly entertaining because it takes us back to a different place, a different time, sometimes even a completely fantasy almost land, like in The Tempest. And that actually is where fantasy comes in. Those were kind of like the first modern day fantasies. Think of The Lord of the Rings. Okay, to give another example, wildly entertaining, never been out of print since they were first published. There are a ton of lessons in there. You can read them as simply an adventure story in a fantastic land at some unspecified point in time. You can also take a lot of lessons from it. Those lessons are there. That's what fills us. But it's not presented as a treatise or an essay or anything like that. That's where the entertainment comes in. Okay? What these characters do, and what so many comic books today do instead, is that they are the left-wing version of Christian movies. And if you're a fan of Christian movies, I apologize. I am not, simply because the message and the ideology of a Christian movie takes complete precedence over the entertainment. Okay? They're not woven in together expertly. It's the equivalent of hitting you over the head with a 2x4. And it's the same thing with Marvel Comics now, with comics in general, actually, particularly incarnated in these two wannabe superheroes, Snowflake and Safespace. And that leads to something else, okay? When a character, or when characters like Snowflake and Safespace are created simply to take advantage of a fad and simply to pat yourself on the back and award yourself woke points, they're not going to last very long. They're not going to last long at all because there is no weight to them. You think about the great comic book characters, okay? You think of Superman, And the entire mythology behind him as the last son of Krypton, as the Man of Steel, as the Man of Tomorrow. That's why Superman has stayed with us for 80 years. It's the same reason why Batman has stayed with us for 80 years, because he has an entire mythology behind him, right? Loss, with themes again, like loss, standing for the greater good, self-discipline, working through tragedy, forging yourself through tragedy, turning your weakness into a strength. Both Batman and Superman both do that, right? Contrary-wise, when a character is simply created, or when something is simply created to take advantage of a fad or a fashion, then when that fad changes, when circumstances change, and they always will, that's the important point, they always will, okay, then those characters are gone. You would be amazed at the number of comic book characters that were created specifically for World War II. To give just one example, I mean, we all know Captain America, right? But there were a ton of others, such as The Shield, Uncle Sam, Liberty Bell, Miss America. They were all created specifically for World War II. Well, after World War II ended, there wasn't any need for those characters anymore. They all disappeared, right? If they didn't disappear, then they became D, E, or even F rated characters. The only reason, actually, why Captain America survived is because Stan Lee kind of resurrected him in the 40s. After World War II ended, in the 1960s, there really weren't a lot of Captain America comics, if I am remembering. It was really Stan Lee, when he restarted Marvel Comics in the 60s, that Captain America became big again, because he brought Captain America into the modern world, made him part of the Avengers, etc., right? And what this means, because if a character really doesn't have anything going for it, if it's just a stand-in for a specific event, or for a specific ideology, or for a specific, again, fad in the culture, then, and they have no substance to them, then there's absolutely no chance for entertainment. There's no chance for heroics. None at all. Okay? Again, Snowflake Safespace, they're not like Batman. Anybody, regardless of their color, regardless of their sex, regardless of their orientation, regardless of their identity, regardless of their ethnicity, can look at Batman and draw inspiration from that character. You don't even have to be an American. He's an American invention, but you don't have to be an American. You can show the Bat logo, okay, practically anywhere in the world, and people will recognize it as Batman, and they will have an idea of what that logo stands for, not just as the character, but also in the larger scheme of things. Loss, self-forging, right? Redemption, fighting evil, all of those things. When you're not like Batman, and again, who is? But when you're not like Batman, when you don't have that substance to you, then really, what's the point? Then there's no chance for heroics. There's absolutely no chance for heroics. Because again, your primary point of existence as a character is simply to push an ideology. Let me ask you this. If Snowflake wasn't non-binary, do you think that they would have Marvel would have cut a whole trailer for him? Do you think that entertainment websites would have written, articles and blog posts about this character? No. He would have just been another D-list Marvel character, as to make a new team to sell a new book. But because he's non-binary, because that's the magic key, because that is the whole focal point of his existence as a character, both off the page and on the page, right? Then there's nothing else to him. Nothing else. So there's no entertainment value. There's nothing. There's no entertainment value, and there's no aspirational value to him either, because no one, I would bet, I shouldn't say no one, because of course there are going to be people who talk about, well, representation, etc., etc. But there is hardly anyone, a micro fraction of people only, is going to draw any sort of inspiration from this character, because he has no substance, again, to him. Okay? And this actually leads to a final point. How many more characters like this are we going to have to create? Right? Snowflake is non-binary. They've rearranged now, so now they have lesbian and gay characters. Well, and I think even some bisexual characters now. Well, what about asexual? What about sapiosexual? What about demisexual? Right? What about ecosexual? Right? If they're all equal, and the LGBTQIA2 plus agenda and progressivism in general says that they are all equal, then how come non-binary people get their own comic book character? They get representation, but all these other people don't. This is just going to open up the floodgates to creating characters specifically to appease, to pander, really, to people. Basically saying, oh, please buy this book because we have this character who is just like you, old buddy, because he is ecosexual. Don't you know? Or you know what? Or even get this. When are we going to get a pedophile superhero? Someone who is minor attracted? When is that going to be their when is that going to be their big inner conflict and struggle? Much like in the was it the 70s or in the 80s, like Tony Stark's big moral quandary was that he was an alcoholic. When are we going to start getting that? Okay, we don't know. But even forgetting just the disgusting thought of actually having a superhero who is a pedophile, minor attracted again, just think about all the characters that they're going to have to create only specifically to appease certain ideologues so that they can look at a comic book panel and say, that's me in the mirror. First of all, it's a very sad way to live, to think that you have no worth if you don't see yourself exactly mirrored in something that is as silly and as finite as a comic book panel. And second of all, this means that all of the great reasons, all the imagination, all for characters, all the imagination for creating characters, and then all the stories that you could tell with characters is going to be gone. Again, they're going to be contrived, they're going to be lazy, and they are going to be uninspiring because, again, the point is not the human factor. The point isn't that these are people with problems like our own who do great and heroic things because they believe in something bigger than themselves. No, the focus is going to be on a particular, specific political message. That's what it's going to be. These people, these wizards of smart at Marvel Comics have not only ruined entertainment, in their company, but they have also ruined heroics. That's just what they've done with the creation of these two characters. And again, that's only going to be the beginning. That's story number 2.